It's an interior offensive line class with a good amount of day two talent. We're breaking down the top 5 on today's Renner Ranks.
This is Renner Ranks, the ultimate NFL ranking show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into today's episode of Renner Ranks, your go-to daily rankings podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. And a special thank you to all the everydayers out there for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to subscribe, like, follow for free on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. I, of course, am your host, Mike Renner, NFL draft analyst for The Messenger. And today's podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for first deposit match of up to $100. One of my favorite positions to scout in any draft is the interior of the offensive line, because that, in my opinion, is what separates the men from the boys in the evaluation perspective. Anyone can watch a wide receiver and say that guy can get open. Yeah, you watch those guys all the time. Not everyone's paying attention to the trenches. Not everyone knows what it takes to be a good interior offensive lineman. So before we get into the class, I'm going to tell you a few things that I look for when I'm scouting interior offensive linemen, that I'm grateful that I got the career start that I did with Pro Football Focus, because a lot of what we watched on tape was line play. A lot of what I had to learn how to grade was offensive line play. And it's not as simple as being big and strong and the most imposing dude along the offensive line, as we're finding out, unfortunately, with Evan Neal for the New York Giants, and multiple first-round busts on the interior offensive line before. Kenyon Green with the Houston Texans. Dude's not even playing this year. Has a shoulder injury, but looked awful year one. I think there are certain things that you have to have in the interior offensive line to be a high-end player. The one I always go back to that I think is a non-negotiable is balance. The best of the best are not blocking from their face. They are not falling to the ground frequently. It's balance. It's never going to be clean, especially for interior offensive linemen. It's never going to be great footing. You're never going to be in a perfect spot to just lock in and drive on the guy across from you like you're on, a sled in the gym. More often than not, you're going to be tripping a little. Someone's foot's going to be there. You're going to get knocked backwards and have to recover. And so the guys that have and show good balance at the collegiate level, it's going to become even more of a necessity once they get to the NFL. And the guys that don't have balance, the guys that are way out over their toes, your waist benders or your reachers, shall we say, that almost got dirty there. Those are the guys you worry about. Now, I'm not saying it's not fixable and that you can't change those things, but more often than not, if a guy has multiple years of ingrained poor habits, it's just difficult to unlearn some of that stuff. And some of it is just how their body's composed, and they're not going to be able to have it, and just innate skill. So balance is one of the biggest things I look for. After that, I love hand usage. Offensive line, it is not technically what we would refer to as a skill position, but it is an extremely skilled position. That is why there are more year 3 breakouts along the interior of the offensive line than there are year 2 breakouts, is because you need reps. It's hand-to-hand combat. You need as much time doing that, practicing that as possible to get up to the requisite skill level to win those hand-to-hand combat battles. Flat out. That is just the way of the position. And so I look for guys who know how to use their hands, and maybe they don't necessarily have perfect technique. The guy I go back to in that regard is Tyler Smith, the Tulsa tackle / now Dallas Cowboys left guard. He did not have anywhere near perfect technique. He had actually no technique, but coming out of Tulsa, he knew how to get his hands on pads and latch on. His grip strength was outstanding. Now with the Dallas Cowboys, once his techniques got better, you're seeing him turn into one of the best guards in the NFL because of it. And so you may not have to, it may not be, that you have to have perfect, refined NFL caliber technique, but you have to know how to use your arms independently, how to use them to your advantage, and how to recover blocks. Those two things are the biggest things I look for. On top of, obviously, then it's a physically demanding position. I think interior offensive line, as opposed to others in the NFL, may be the least physically demanding position in terms of you can get away with average to below average athletes at that position more so than, say, wide receiver, running back, offensive tackle, defensive end, like these more physically, cornerback especially, like positions where basically you got to meet some thresholds or else you're going to be at SOL at the NFL level. I think interior offensive line, you can get away with it a little bit, but it's still, play strength is still massive. Foot quicks is still massive. Agility, the ability to mirror is still huge. It's why shuttle time is one of the most closely correlated combine drills to future success at that position. Also offensive tackle in the NFL, because that is what mirroring is. That's pretty much the whole point of that drill, is to see how you can move laterally. And that is what mirroring is in pass protection. So that's what I look for. And then just attitude, right? Do you play the game with an edge, or are you locked in snap after snap after snap, or are you lackadaisical? That's any position though. Those are what I look for interior offensive alignment. So with that in mind, let us get to the top 5 here in the 2024 NFL draft class. At number 5, and I'll just say off the top about this class, it's really grown on me. I think all 5 of these guys I could end up with second round grades on. I'm not sure any are first rounders, but I like them all at minimum in the top 100. Probably all going to be top 75 players when it's all said and done for me. I like these 5 guys. I think all 5 profile to quality starters in the NFL, and a quality starter on the interior offensive line maybe, isn't necessarily a first rounder, depending on how you believe you can find talent at the positions. But I think that's a second rounder more often than not. So at number 5, it is Zach Frazier, the West Virginia center. He's 6'3", 310, 4-year starter at West Virginia. He's a guy with a wrestling background. And if you know anything about offensive line play, wrestling background is usually a green flag. That is something you love to see from those guys, because what is wrestling? Grappling, hand usage. How do you manipulating the bodies of other human beings against their will? What is offensive line play? Grappling, hand usage, manipulating other people's bodies against their will. And so Zach Frazier, I believe he was undefeated, or at least multi-time state champ back in high school. Now he's undersized, 6'3", 310, is not ideal size, I'd say, for a center, but it's not, so he's not like a people moving center, more of a zone center, we'd say. But to me, he's just solid across the board. His hands are exceptional. His balance is exceptional. He maintains and sustains blocks as well as anyone in this draft class. To me, he's very much Brian Allen-esque, the former Michigan State / Rams center. If you've watched him play at all, obviously that's like interior offensive line comps are always kind of like, you can say whoever the heck you want. A lot of people will just go over the heads, but I think that's who he kind of reminds me of, and that maybe he doesn't have the highest of ceilings. He may never turn into Jason Kelce. He's just not there physically, but I think you're getting a darn good starting center, tough football player, experienced football player, and a guy that day one should be able to come into your starting lineup and at minimum not look out of place, not be a liability. Maybe not going to be a high-end guy right away. Always difficult to project how an offensive lineman is going to translate to the NFL. But I think at minimum, a guy you will be expecting to start from day one. All right, before we get to the top 4 here, we have, whenever the game clock stops, that's time to order in with DoorDash. Order chips, dips, nachos, or everything you need to make your own nachos on DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. Kick back at kickoff with unbeatable deals on everything you need for the watch party or tailgate. This past weekend, Hattie B's, the hot chicken here in Nashville, I was fiending it Sunday morning. I got it. I got 3 different sides. I felt like the fattest man alive, but my God, was it delicious. I will say though, canker sores, I had 2 of them at the time, ordered the hot, and I thought my mouth was going to revolt against me. I do not recommend anything hot with canker sores. But get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order at DoorDash. Download the DoorDash app, enter code LOCK23. That's 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Let's get back to the top 4 here. At number 4, Connecticut guard, right guard specifically, Christian Haynes. I believe he's 4-year starter with all 4 years, him playing right guard. So that's probably where you're going to want to put him in the NFL. But the Connecticut guard, 6'2", 313. That's a body type that can play anywhere on the interior and very long arms for his frame. Most 6'2" guys, you're thinking 31, 32-inch arms. I don't have inside info. I would guess he's somewhere in the neighborhood of 33 and a half plus. It looks like 34 on tape. I mean, he's very lanky, uses his hands extremely well, and very powerful hands. You see him manipulate on contact repeatedly. And now at Connecticut for Christian Haynes, not the best competition, right? He's not playing necessarily top-end guys, but he already does have a Senior Bowl invite. Believe he will be down in Mobile. We'll get a great chance to see him there, but I'm not worried. I love his technique and pass protection. I love the year-on-year progression I've seen from him. Early on in his career, he was very herky-jerky, kind of. It was hard to describe it. It was almost like his feet moved faster than the rest of his body. Like they were in a hurry, and then everything else was kind of moving slower. This year, he really looks far more fluid, far more comfortable on the move, and just far more successful when he is on the move. And the guy can play. The guy can really play out in space. I mean, he is a really athletic guard. We're going to talk about this in the whole interior offensive line class. There's not a ton of like great athletes. The guy at number 1 is probably the only one I'd put in a tier with Christian Haynes in terms of athleticism. But Haynes is kind of an all-around dude. I honestly, if he goes to the Senior Bowl and really shows out, I could see having him as the interior offensive line 1 in this draft class because he has all the tools, plays with that sort of nastiness you want to see. I'm very high on this guy. Like I said, these top 4 are surefire in my mind, second rounders at this point. I think at least my evaluation on them will be second rounders. Where they end up, I'll come off the board, remains to be seen, but big fan of the top 4 in this draft class. So at number 3 now, little different type of player. So number 4 is Christian Haynes from Connecticut. Number 3 is Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. 6'4", 335 pounds. Believe he's a 5th-year senior. Don't know why he came back to school because this is his 4th year as a starter. He started at right tackle in 2020, left tackle in 2021, and then left guard the last 2 seasons. But Cooper Beebe, my man, can move dudes off the line of scrimmage. He is corn-fed, country strong, what you think of when you think of a Kansas State offensive lineman, right? Like he can barrel dudes. He is just built like a fire hydrant, man. The guy is the same width from his shoulders down to his feet and the ultimate double team weapon in this draft class. He goes hip to hip with a tackle or a center on an ace or deuce or ace block. He's moving the line of scrimmage, man. He just is. And he has some on the move. Like he's not great on the move. He's not the most fleet of foot, but he plays balanced on the move. He's not out of control when he does get out in space. Now, he's not going to locate every linebacker, but he's also not going to be tripping over himself, sprinting out to go get them. So I'm a fan. He's been extremely good in pass protection over the course of his career, whether it is at tackle or whether it is at guard, and just not a guy you're going to bull rush. He's too big, too strong to go through him. You're going to have to go around. So big fan of Cooper Beebe's game. Probably just a guard, though, at the next level. I don't see the tackle versatility. Like I said, he's not going to hold up against NFL caliber speed. And then at that size at center, you're getting maybe a little too big. That's a beefy center to have in the NFL. Maybe you're a pure gap scheme. You'd be fine with it. If you're running any move stuff, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'd want him there. All right, on to number 2. A similar type of player, but I like this guy a little bit better. And number 2 is Oregon center Jackson Powers Johnson. A rarity in that this is his first year as a starter, and he's only a junior or only a 3rd-year player. I think at this point, the designations of junior, redshirt, sophomore are just like out the window. He's a 3rd year. I hate that we had to get rid of those, or I hate that COVID just threw those out the window, but they did. So he's a 3rd-year player, first year as a full-time starter. And my Lord, Jackson Powers Johnson, the Oregon center, can play. 6'3", 320, has a nastiness to him. I mean, he buries guys. He's gotten some personal fouls this year from some late action, shall we say, that he probably shouldn't have been engaging in. But as an evaluator, it's not so late that it's borderline dirty, like say, Trevor Penning was coming out of Northern Iowa, where it was just a penalty machine. And you're like, man, is this guy going to like figure it out at the NFL level? It's not to that degree, but Jax Powers-Johnson has kind of the right amount that you want, where it's like, oh, he's the guy you're going to war with at the next level. He's the tone setter. And at center position, that's kind of what you want, man, especially in this day and age where everyone wants to do tush pushes on 3rd and 4th and short. He's the kind of guy that can make those successful because he is barrel chested, burly dude, can handle head up nose tackles. And I love that he's doing that as a true junior, right? Cooper Beebe, we talked about 5th year. Christian Haynes, 5th year. A lot of older guys that usually on the interior offensive line, which also might mean that Jax Powers-Johnson may not even declare, because I think he does have enough tools that he comes back and puts on even better tape in 2024. I'm talking about a guy who could be a first rounder. But as it stands right now, I still think he's probably firmly a day 2 pick at worst. And, when you're an interior offensive lineman, are you really pinning your hopes to your rookie contract being, a top 20 pick where it really starts to change your money? You're really playing for that second contract anyway. So I think if I'm him, go get out as soon as possible, right? And go chase that second contract bag is my advice that I would give players in a similar boat to him. But only 1 pressure allowed on the season. Has some great blocks out on screens, out in space. Like when he gets kind of ahead of steam, he's not slow. I'll say for an interior offensive lineman, he may not be the most agile, but definitely not his athleticism is not a weakness by any means. I don't have issues with how he moves on tape. That's for sure. So massive breakout year for him. I believe he's PFF's highest graded center in college football right now. In his first year, that's madness. So big fan of his game and where he could go from here, right? Because hasn't played a ton of football. And usually the more guys play football, especially at this position, what I talked about at the beginning, a skilled position, the better they get at it. So very impressed with Jackson Powers-Johnson out of Oregon. Before we get to the number 1, though, it's time for your guys' favorite read of the week, Jase Medical. We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. I'm thankful for the connection we have. And today I want to chat to be a little more personal. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply of ED medications. You realize what that means. Bring on extended travel. Bring on the next natural disaster or supply chain issue. You are covered, my friend. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your generics for Cialis, Viagra, or Revatio. That sounds, I don't even know what that is. Prescription. And this is possible because of our friends at Jase Medical. Go online right now at jasemedical.com to receive 12-month supply of daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jase. I am thankful for the service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered an antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. If you or someone you loved would have some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily med, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code locked on for $20 off your purchase. I was all over the place there. All right, back to the number 1 guy on this list. And it is Duke, currently offensive tackle, but I project him on the interior, Graham Barton. So Graham Barton, 3 years starting at left tackle, the past 3 years for Duke. Started at center, actually, as a freshman. Has been banged up this year. This year's tape is not what I'm basing this ranking off of necessarily. If you just watch this year's tape, it is not as good as any guy, truthfully, that I've mentioned yet. His 2021 tape, though, yikes, I always get the years mixed up now. 2022 tape is better than anyone's on this list, though. And so I'm banking on that because he's had a number of injuries already this year. That some of them he's played through, some of them he's had to miss time for. But he's 6'5", 314, and the man can fly. He is the most athletic interior offensive lineman on this list. You see him pulling, you see him getting to the second level, you see him leading out on screens, and he looks like what the elite guys to the next level look like. I mean, he is truly a high-end athlete for the position. Great ability to change directions also when he gets out in space. So he finds dudes. I mean, it is rare for him to be at the second level looking for a linebacker out, pull in looking for a cornerback and not find them. So it's good to have a guard. Guards pull at the second level, pull around the formation far more than tackles do traditionally. So one of the bigger reasons why I like him at guard. And also, I don't think he has quite the frame at 6'5", a little on the short side, a little on the shorter arms to stay at tackle. Not the strongest, but he can still move guys because he's so explosive off the line of scrimmage. He gets on them very quickly. It's going to even be more so the case when he kicks inside at guard, when you're getting a tighter shade from D tackles as opposed to edges who are wide up on you. So I've given him to the 49ers in a lot of mocks because of what they do in their run game, because of the needs they have along the offensive line. I would love to see that fit. And also the 49ers going to be picking probably at the back end of the first round. I'm not sure after his tape this year he ends up there, but he'll probably be at the Senior Bowl. He'll probably blow up the combine. He may be a big pre-draft process riser. Who knows? Riser, though, I mean, he's number one on this list. I'm a big fan of him already. So can't rise too much higher up, at least my interior offensive line board. So there you have it. 5 through 1. Zach Frazier at number 5, the West Virginia center. Christian Haynes, the Connecticut guard, right guard at the moment. At number 4, at number 3, Cooper Beebe, the Kansas State left guard. And at number 2, Jackson Powers Johnson, the Oregon center. At number 1, Duke left tackle, Graham Barton, who I project to pretty much anywhere on the interior at this point. So there you have it. A pretty solid interior offensive line class. If you need one, day 2, second round, draft one of these guys. You won't regret it, hopefully. You might regret it. There's always one or two that I get wrong. It always happens. On tomorrow's episode, we are ranking running backs. Not the best class, but we're ranking them with PFF's Sam Monson. He had a different top 5 than mine. There's going to be a lot of different top 5s in this running back class because there's no surefire one dude who stands out ahead of the rest. There's not even a handful of guys that really stand out. We talked about it on the pod. There's probably not a guy I draft in the top 75 picks in this upcoming draft. And now that's not even like hating on running backs. Like that's coming from like a pretty running back favorable take. It's just not a talented class for top end guys. But that doesn't mean there's not going to be some that are still stars at the next level. So make sure to check that out. And we will see you guys tomorrow. You've been listening to Renner Ranks, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day.